So I decided to do a group on counseling with pediatric cancer patients in treatment and in remission. A little backstory about why I chose that is my boyfriend's son actually got diagnosed with cancer when he was 5 months old. He's going on 5 now, and he still has certain limitations, and there's still certain things that he can't do, and he can't quite grasp why he can't do these things. He sees all the other kids his age doing those things, and he gets upset when he isn't able to do them as well due to limitations from having treatments and side effects from chemo. And he can walk, but he has like wrist crutches he has to use because the tumor was on his spinal cord, and so things of that nature. And he gets upset when he can't do things that other kids can do. So this is something that affects my life personally, and as well as it's something I'm interested in to see if there's, groups out there like this, which I'm sure there are, but I've never heard about it. I've never known much of it, and I've heard he needs to be in counseling. I feel like it would be good for him, so I decided to do some more research on it. Doing research, I found that most kids are very resilient. Most kids that get cancer are very resilient. They're more resilient than adults are. They roll with the punches because they don't really have any other option. But it does have effects on them psychologically that, a lot of times we don't realize because they are still kids. They're still learning. They're still growing. And so we blame it on our age when, in fact, it could be because of the cancer diagnosis or the treatments. There's a term in the research I found that was chemo brain. And then I've heard my boyfriend use that term as well. There's things that they might not be able to grasp as well because of the chemo that they've had. It affects their brain. It affects their body. And so they're resilient, but it still does have effect on them. And one of the articles I read, they had kids who, after remission, actually had PTSD from treatment and the diagnosis, just being in and out of the hospital so much. They had PTSD. They fit the criteria for the diagnosis of PTSD from their cancer diagnosis. So it takes a lot out of them, and often we're quick to blame it on, oh, well, they're just kids. They're growing, things like that. But that's not always the case. It has a lot to do with their treatment, and then their life gets completely turned upside down. They go from, going to school, being around their friends, being around their family, to now they're in and out of hospitals, clinics, doctor's appointments, being poked, being prodded. The only people they see are doctors, nurses, mom, and dad. They don't see their friends anymore. They can't go to school. They can't interact. They're not social. And depending on what kind of cancer they have or, how severe it is, some of them get put in isolation because of germs, and their immune system gets shot whenever they're going through chemo and radiation. So they can't be around other people. So it does take a toll on them mentally, and they often have a hard time expressing themselves and, like I said, not understanding why they can't do things that other kids can do. And so I thought this was a really good idea for a group, especially after I read the research about it. I thought it was a really good idea. Kind of how I would design the group. It would be an ongoing revolving group because I feel like unfortunately there's always going to be kids with cancer. And I don't think giving it a limit would be good because, some kids could have cancer for years or other kids could be cleared up in a year. It depends on the severity and what kind of cancer they have, how long they're in treatment. I think the best place to hold these groups would be at like a cancer treatment center or the hospital, because a lot of times these kids are inpatient cancer patients. They're there for a long time, or they're visiting these treatment centers once a week, if not more than once a week, to get treatments. And so that's a place that's neutral ground for all of them and that they're always at. And then whenever I was designing this, I got to thinking about, well, what exactly does pediatric include? So I kind of, after reading research, I'm like, anywhere from ages 4 to 16 is good pediatric ages. And I know I thought the same thing that you guys are probably thinking. What do 4-year-olds have in common with 16-year-olds? Probably not a lot. Those 16-year-olds might have 4-year-old little brothers or sisters, or the 4-year-olds might have 16-year-old brothers or sisters. but they don't have a lot in common. So putting them in a therapy group together would not be I don't think it would be beneficial to either one of them. I'm not going to, concretely say it wouldn't be, but I don't think it would be beneficial to either one of them. So my thought was to hold one therapy day a week at these centers or hospitals and break the day up with age groups. For example, do 4 to 6. Like ages 4 to 6 for an hour, do ages 7 to 9 for an hour, ages 10 to 12, and then ages 13 through 16. And everybody has their hour where they can come in, talk about what they want to talk about. And each session setting would be different because of the ages. So I would say probably from the age groups 4 to 9, you could do more of like a play therapy setting, like group setting, or, have interactive activities that they all can join in on, because those are the younger kids who are being affected and who are used to being able to go outside and play and hang out with their friends in kindergarten and first grade and stuff like that, and now they can't do that anymore. And so I feel like play therapy would be a good idea for those age groups, so they could express themselves, they could be around other kids, and, they could work through their issues, and anybody trained in play therapy would be able to pick up on what, their problems are by just watching them play and interact with other kids. And, you could have them draw pictures, things like that, and talk to them a little bit about how they're feeling, especially the older ones. And then I think from ages 10 to 16 is when kids are really starting to come into their feelings and know kind of who they are and are able to express themselves more. So I think those ages would be better with more of like a talk therapy group session. They could sit there, talk about how they feel, cancer sucks or whatever else. And so they can express themselves that way, and they have other people around them that are a support system that's not their parents or the doctors. Because I know they have a solid support system with their parents and their doctors, but sometimes it's not enough. As bad as that sounds, sometimes that's just not enough. You need more than that, because, I love my parents and, my close friends and family and stuff like that, but I still seek outside help because, sometimes it's just not enough. So I think that this group therapy would be beneficial to them because they can relate to somebody their age that's going through the same thing as them. Their parents aren't going through chemo and radiation, but those kids in that group session are. So I do think that would be beneficial to them. Like I said, I would hold it once a week, one time a week for a whole day, go through the groups. It would be revolving and ongoing because, like I said, there's always kids in and out. There's kids who go into remission. Oh, and kids that are in remission are invited to this group as well because, like I stated earlier, research showed that there was children who had PTSD symptoms who were in remission. So the children that were in remission would also be invited in, and I think that would be a good insight for the kids who are still going through treatment, like, hey, I can get better, and it would give them hope that, look, I can get better, I'm going to make it through this, like, this isn't as bad as it seems, they're fine now, they're living their normal life. And then the children who are in remission could, talk to other children who are in remission to get hope about their current status too as well. And then I'm hoping with this group that it alleviates some of the stress that comes with a cancer diagnosis. Because believe it or not, little kids can get stressed out too. They might not be able to express it like we can, but they can still get stressed out. They just don't know how to express themselves. So I'm hoping this group would alleviate the stress that comes with the diagnosis, the treatment, and it gives hope to these patients and even their families, because they can go back to see their mom and dad in their room or go home with mom and dad, and they're not so, upset and worried and scared. They're hopeful that, okay, yeah, I'm going to get better. This is going to make me better. And then they have a better understanding of why they might not exactly be able to do everything that the other kids can do right now. But, there will be a day where they can do that. And then I think every group is going to have its strengths, and then it's going to have, I'm not going to call them weaknesses, but maybe limitations. because I think any kind of therapy, like going to any kind of therapy, will build, something good for you, and it will make you stronger. And so the strength, like I said, it'll be an added benefit to these kids' lives. They'll feel a sense of normalcy. They'll get to see other kids, interact with other kids, something outside of their hospital room and needles being stuck in their arm. Some of the limitations might be the parents would be hesitant to let them be in this group because their kid's already sick. And so, anything new they might be hesitant about, which is understandable. Some of the kids might not get along. They're kids, they might not like each other, or one says something that the other one doesn't like, or with the younger kids, one's playing with a toy that the other one doesn't like. So that's another limitation, is that some of the group participants might not get along, and it's a lot harder to deal with when it comes to kids than it is with adults, because adults, you can tell them, hey, if you don't like it, you can leave, or you guys can sit on opposite sides of the room and agree to disagree. But kids, that doesn't work the same. You have to work through their conflicts and figure out why, little Johnny doesn't like little Timmy, and hopefully they can make it work. And then you have the risk of there not being any participation at all. This is something that can be marketed throughout the hospital by the hospital staff and administration, and then there's no participation. People might not want to show up. Kids are tired. Kids are sick. They're going through a lot. And so that's something that, we just don't want to do it. We're not going to put our kid through that. So that's another limitation that comes with this group. But I do think this group has a lot of potential to do good for pediatric cancer patients or patients that are in remission. It'll help them through their diagnosis. It'll help them through their treatments, gain a sense of normalcy and a sense of peace with everything that's going on. So I hope you guys agree and like my group.